It's the last desperate fight that changes the course of World War II.
You're face to face with these bastards, and they're going to kill you.
Hitler's all-out gamble sends more than 250,000 German troops on the attack.
You're seeing chaos as the Americans begin to piece together what is going on here.
Outnumbered and severely undersupplied, U.S. troops are facing the ultimate test.
I wasn't thinking about nothing except getting to the target.
Using authentic battlefield footage, cutting-edge graphics, and eyewitness accounts from the heroes who survived. This is the Battle of the Bulge as never before told.
He said, think of my mother, and I said, think of mine.
Europe, 1944. In the 6 months since D-Day, the Allies have beaten the Germans 450 miles across France. The capital, Paris, is liberated. Holland is freed. The Germans are on the run.
They've suffered some pretty devastating loss. They've taken a lot of hits, and they've lost a lot of manpower.
The Allies seize the Ardennes forests, 4,000 square miles of dense woodland right on the German border. Victory is within sight. December 15th, 1944. Stationed deep in the Ardennes forest is the 168th Engineer Combat Battalion and Private First Class Les Bornstein.
It was cold, but we were living pretty comfortably. We had replaced our tents with little huts in the woods. It was very quiet. It was a ghost front.
A big part of what the Americans are doing in the Ardennes is resting. This is a quiet sector. You'll refit here. Things will be okay. You'll lick your wounds. You'll get new people, and then we'll decide what to do with you.
Many soldiers are given passes to the French capital, Paris, 200 miles behind the lines, 3 days' drive from the German front. Including 20-year-old Private First Class Carl Beck of Hotel Company, 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment.
You're 20 years old, been 72 days on the line, got a pocket full of money, and you're in Paris. So I guess there was some sinning going on.
December 16th, 6 a.m. Allied outposts report signs of German troop movements. With so many soldiers away from the action, it's left to men with non-combat specialties to investigate the Germans probing the line. Men like engineer Les Bornstein.
They said leave our shovels and our picks behind and all any mine equipment. Drop everything, all your personal things. Don't take any wallets or anything else, and take our rifles and bazookas and follow them.
An engineer, Les is used to clearing roads and building bridges. Now he has a new priority.
We became infantry.
Les's unit is in the woods surrounding St. Vith, a town at a major intersection of roads through the Ardennes.
I saw Jimmy Hill, my buddy. He was a sergeant, he was a very good soldier, and he was in a hole. Jimmy, all of a sudden, said, "Here they come."
Approaching their position, are Panzer Mark IV tanks, the main German armored attack vehicle. Les and Jimmy's unit makes first contact with a major Nazi counterattack. 250,000 German troops and 9 whole tank divisions are moving into the Ardennes, catching the entire American military off guard.
It came as a complete surprise and a shock. And he says, "Get the bazooka ready."
The engineering corps have no armored support, only small arms, rifles, and bazookas. The M9A1 bazooka is a portable tank buster, accurate up to 300 yards. It fires a shell with a half a pound of explosive at 180 miles an hour. But the Panzer Mark IV tank has 2.5-inch armor that can easily stop a conventional bazooka round. So U.S. troops are issued with a shaped charge anti-tank round. The inside of the nose of a shaped charge is hollow. The explosive inside has a matching hollow cone. The empty cone acts like a lens to focus all the power of the explosive onto a single spot, delivering maximum energy, enabling it to penetrate steel armor up to 3 feet thick.
He said, "Get ready, here they come." The shell has 2 leads on it, a negative and positive. They were soldered together. I go to pull the solder apart, and I broke it.
There are only 3 rockets left.
I pull the shell out of the canister. I go to pull the negative and positive leads that made of copper, was soldered very lightly together. My hands are shaking, not only from the cold, but from the fear. Tremendous fear. And I broke that one. But that's the end of us. If you ever have a nightmare where you run and you keep falling, you can't go any further, that's the same thing. He cursed me loudly, and he said to me, "Get the 3rd wounded." I said, "I got it." Jimmy, very, very calmly get up on the parapet of this deep hole, and he waited. Now the tank was within feet, not yards, feet. And I put my head against his shoulder. I said, "Please, Jimmy, don't miss." I can't say enough about this Jimmy Hill. He's an unbelievable soldier.
The lead tank is disabled. German Panzer support infantry move forward, searching for where the shot came from.
My mother spoke Yiddish. I could understand what they were saying. They say, "From where did that shot come from?" They couldn't find us. The tree boughs had camouflaged the hole.
The German tank's initial shot brought down tree branches, helping cover Les and Jimmy's position. The Germans can't find them.
And I could all of a sudden hear the word, "Komm zurück," which means "come back." Someone yelled, one of the superiors. Saved my life.
Jimmy and Les halt a major German advance in their sector. Elsewhere, Americans aren't as successful. By the end of the first day, the lines are completely overrun. Aggressive German attacks by heavily armored divisions surge through the northern front. American units are overwhelmed.
You're seeing chaos. So it's crisis management as the Americans begin to piece together what is going on here.
American troops are under attack from 24 divisions of German soldiers.
They're an extremely potent enemy. They have good combat soldiers with high morale, and they've got a lot of firepower.
All leave is canceled. Thousands of troops all over Western Europe are rounded up and loaded onto trucks.
The orders were, get on those damn trucks, mount the machine guns on the side, the crouch are just up the road. They rode for about 2 days on those damn trucks. Of course, I needed a chance to rest, get rid of that hangover.
Private First Class Walter Hughes is with Item Company, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment.
I had a pass in my hand for Paris, and we got word that the Germans had broke through in some place called the Ardennes. They came and woke everybody up about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were alerted to move out. Nobody knew anything about what was going on. All we knew that the Germans were on the move.
The 7th and 10th Armored Divisions and the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions are mobilized immediately. 60,000 men and 11,000 vehicles are on their way to the Ardennes.
So much equipment was moving on the roads, and every little town that we went through, there was MPs there directing traffic, and we knew it was a big operation, whatever it was, but we weren't sure, and nobody knew where we were.
Right now, American light infantry and paratroop divisions are the only ones there to hold the line. The nearest tanks and heavy armor are General George Patton's 4th Armored Division, 100 miles away to the south. They immediately set off to reinforce the Americans in the north. December 16th, 11:30 p.m., the end of the first day. With no tank support, infantry and paratroopers will have to hold off the attack on their own. Private First Class Don Burgett and the rest of Able Company drive through the night to the front.
We would go through the night. We went through the old World War I battlefields. And I remember standing up in my truck and I looked out and I said, World War I is the war to end all wars. And I said, the ghosts are restless tonight.
Over 500,000 Americans will be mobilized. Their orders: hold the Ardennes at all costs. None of them know they are about to fight in the biggest and bloodiest American battle of World War II. December 17th, 1944, 11 a.m. Deep in France's Ardennes forest, Hitler's last-ditch counterattack has the American forces reeling. In 24 hours, German troops, 250,000 strong, breach an 85-mile-long front and begin to push the front lines back.
These are some of the best remaining soldiers the German army have, so that's why Hitler has put them there. He thinks they're going to smash through the American lines and achieve the purpose of his offensive.
Hitler's target is the port of Antwerp. If he can break through, he will split the Allies in two and cut off their supply routes. To stop him, the Americans must hold on to the road intersections in key towns in the forest. The most important of these is Bastogne. December 18th, 4 p.m. The 101st Airborne creep into the area. Their orders: secure the roads and woods around the town. Private First Class Don Bergen is attached to Able Company, 506th PIR.
My buddy was one of the point men, and he had good eyes, and he said, there they are, there they are. And he turned, looked back to see us. We couldn't shoot because he was between us and the Germans. Shot him through the mouth, took his spine out. He was dead before he hit the ground.
Another trooper rushes forward.
He pulled his knife on the way down, and he plunged it into the German, and right in his heart, and killed him. In these fractions of bang, 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 it's gone, it's over, we were running forward. Finally, we got to the other side. My buddy, who was manning the machine gun at that time, was about 12 feet from him. I saw blood come out of the back of his helmet for 2 feet, and it was steaming. And I'd never seen blood like that before. And he fell over the gun. You just got to keep going. That's the only way you're going to win. I wanted that gun. I was a qualified machine gunner. Every time a man would get hit, I would take over. Another trooper came running in. He said, I'll take it. And I said, it's my gun. Well, you can't stand on the battlefield and argue. Just then, I saw 2 German helmets. So I took that one and I put a good shot in. And this one, I saw the helmets go. And I felt better.
At 6:30 p.m. A few miles away, Hotel Company, including Private First Class Carl Beck, is also under a full-scale attack.
Oh gosh, I must have fired a couple of boxes of ammunition. Trees that look like streetcars coming by, you know. You're face to face with these bastards, and they're going to kill you. Or you're going to kill them. It was just a matter of survival.
Without warning, Carl is blown 5 feet into the air.
It was either a grenade or that little 50-millimeter mortar they had. It was trigger fired. Pieces of shrapnel and crap get in your head, you know, and you can't see zilch, you know, and my assistant gunner's there saying, you're bleeding like a stuck hog.
The explosion from a German Model 24 stick grenade can blast shrapnel over 200 yards. Many deaths are caused by the pressure sphere as it expands outward from the blast faster than the speed of sound. When this front of ultra-high pressure hits the victim, the blood vessels in their lungs burst and drown them. But as the blast expands, the power drops off rapidly. This means the blast wave is survivable for men over 5 feet away. Despite his injuries, there's nothing Carl can do but stay on the front line.
The Krauts had overrun our hospital. There wasn't any place to go anyway. It didn't matter if my brains were coming out. You know, there's still no hospital.
December 18th, 5 p.m. By the end of day 3, the men in Bastogne are surrounded.
In the first 3 days of the Bulge, the Germans can definitely win.
Amid the chaos and the loss of 10,000 American soldiers, the men hold on with a grim determination.
Our attitude was, you poor devils have got us surrounded. You're the guys in trouble. You better surrender to us.
December 21st, 1944. Day 6 of the Nazis' surprise counterattack. German forces have secured a bulge 50 miles deep into Allied territory. 10 divisions of American soldiers are fighting to hold back 24 divisions of invaders.
In the north, you've got 6th SS Panzer Army, the most powerful armored divisions that the German army still has, heavy with Waffen-SS, I guess we'll call them Nazi soldiers. In the middle, you've got 5th Panzer Army, which also has some fine armored units from the regular German army, most notably 2nd Panzer Division.
By throwing every able-bodied soldier into the area, the Americans managed to slow down the German invasion. However, unless reinforcements arrive soon, territory held by the Americans only 1 week before will be lost. In the north, the key town of St. Vith has already fallen into enemy hands. In the south, the Nazis have the town of Bastogne surrounded. But the 101st Airborne holds strong, denying the Germans passage on the main road through the Ardennes. December 21st, 6 a.m. In sub-zero temperatures, the men of the 101st Airborne dig in the woods around the town.
Cold was probably our worst enemy.
Rifles are useless in the heavy fog. Men on patrols through the woods can only see inches in front of them.
I took my .45 pistol that my dad had given me and I cocked it back, put the safety on. And just then a German came around. I had him just like that, right up against his cheek. He said, "No, think of my mother." And I said, "Think of mine." You get that way, you have to. And if we hadn't been that way, we'd have lost the war.
The heavy fog has settled in across the Ardennes. American planes cannot fly in. The men on the ground are running dangerously low on food, clothing, and ammunition. And without air support, it's impossible to resupply them.
Hitler had always, in coming up with this offensive, banked on the idea he was going to get bad weather. Why does he want bad weather? To ground Allied air.
In fact, the heavy fog proves challenging for both sides, causing the Germans to have trouble identifying a clear target to aim at. They often resort to shelling whole areas where they suspect Americans might be dug in.
People say in movies and stuff, incoming. That's nonsense. You just know, like an animal, when something disturbs the air.
There are two ways to detonate a German 105mm artillery shell. In the contact method, the tip hits the target, causing it to explode. The Germans can also use a timer method. The gunners twist a rotational timer, and the clockwork mechanism counts down. In the bulge, the Germans set the timers of shells not to explode next to the men, but in the trees above them, called a tree burst. This causes tree fragments up to several yards in length to fly through the air and wound GIs caught in the open, dramatically increasing the potential devastation of a single shell.
The only way you can get away from it is to be in some kind of covered foxhole or something.
The Americans on the ground don't know it, but even after 4 years of war, the Germans actually have more ordnance and the weapons with which to fire it than ever before.
German production by the end of 1944 is actually higher than it was in 1942. they're actually producing more stuff. And the reason they are, they've moved a lot of their operations underground, but also slave labor.
December 22nd, 6 a.m. 3 days before Christmas, 1 week into the battle. Spread very thin, communication is key for the Americans to react quickly to German attacks. In the northern sector of the Bulge, Private First Class Walt Hughes' job is to maintain communication links between outposts and command.
The Germans would be mortaring the position, and that would break the wires up.
Walt and his lieutenant are about half a mile behind the front lines. Out ahead, Americans fill foxholes in the dark woods, only a few hundred feet from the German lines.
Lieutenant Blankenship hadn't heard from the men all night. We heard firing going on, both from the Germans and the men. So he said to me, he says, Hughes, he says, follow me and trace the wire. He says, see if we can fix the wire and find out what's going on out there. When I came to the end of the wire, it was pretty close to the hole. The Germans opened up on us with a heavy machine gun. Blankenship went in the hole with the guys, and I fell in behind them. There are a couple of wounded men. Blankenship grabbed the gun. Hughes, he says, do you think you can get around behind him and put him out of business? I said, isn't that a job for a sergeant? He says, you're right, Sergeant Hughes. Now go get the bastards. And I said to myself, well, if you're going to die a sergeant anyway.
To prepare for the assault, Walt takes off his helmet.
We used to take them off a lot. Unless you were in areas where artillery was coming in all the time, guys would dump their helmets because they wouldn't stop a bullet. And I left my belt and I took 2 extra clips and the Tommy gun in this hand. I started along the ditch, which was parallel to where the Germans were. And once I got past where their hole was, I looked around for other Germans because usually you'll see other Germans protecting that machine gun nest. I didn't see nobody. So I come out of the ditch and I started crawling behind where they were shooting. They had started shooting at Blankenship again. And Blankenship knew I was up there someplace, so he was firing, but he was firing off to the left, so it wouldn't accidentally get me. They were shooting their own gun. Blankenship was shooting his. They didn't even hear me come.
Walter makes it back to base. Because of the extreme courage under fire of individual soldiers like Walt, the Americans managed to hold the line. They know that if they fail and the Germans break through, it could prolong the war by years at a cost of untold American lives. December 23rd, 1944, 6 a.m. The Battle of the Bulge has been raging for 8 days. American troops have already suffered more casualties than in any other battle so far in World War II. The Germans hold a salient 50 miles deep into Allied territory. And the remaining American soldiers are running dangerously low on supplies. Then, 2 days before Christmas, the break they need. The fog lifts across the Ardennes.
I was cleaning my machine gun. The sun had come out and I saw it shining on these ice formations around the edge of this foxhole. and it looked like jewels.
You could see these shafts like you're in a cathedral. And the troopers were standing there putting their hands in the sunlight, like that. And some of them were dancing little jigs. Now we're going to get them, now we're going to get them.
And right away we heard bombers.
When the fog lifted, you can now send fighter aircraft and other aircraft out on missions to destroy German vehicles and German troop positions.
First planes that I recall coming in was C-47s, and then P-47s came in behind them, strafing and dropping bombs on those tanks.
Much-needed supplies are also dropped for the Americans surrounded in Bastogne.
K-rations, ammunition, medical supplies, electricians, communication, they were dropping everything.
Despite the air support, to push the Germans back, the Americans still desperately await the arrival of heavy armor and weapons. December 26, 1944, 11 a.m. Driving north without a break since the battle started, General George Patton's 4th Armored Division breaks through the German lines, finally reaching Bastogne.
When they broke through, I mean, there was a wild hoorah from Bastogne. All of us, we were raggedy ass, but we won.
I just want to emphasize emphatically that we were far from being rescued. We were relieved and glad to be relieved.
Now the Americans can go on the offensive against an army that is still well supplied and reinforced. It's clear the Germans aren't going to give up territory so close to their homeland.
About the 1st of January of '45, we moved up north to close off the salient. It's so creepy with this fog laying on the ground. It's like as if you could see Little Red Riding Hood or the Gingerbread House or something. It was creepy, I'll tell you. Of all the things that stuck fear into my heart was to listen to the squeak, 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 squeak of bogey wheels of tanks maneuvering around it, because you don't know where those guys are going to go. Germans were all over the place, so I was firing a machine gun. Now look, I'm a slick-sleeve private machine gunner, and what I know is, there's the sons of bitches. Let's go get them. We were for the fight. That's what we're there for.
The M1919 machine gun is designed to provide automatic fire of .30 caliber rounds for sustained periods. Recoil operated, the kick from firing one round causes the next round to move into the chamber. And for the first time, the U.S. soldier has a lightweight weapon capable of delivering 500 rounds per minute. Light enough in an emergency to fire while on the move.
It in there and move, shoot, and communicate. And that's what we did. And our spirits were real high, and we'll waste these sons of bitches. That's what I was supposed to do, was waste Krauts. And we did it the best we could.
The going is slow and bloody, but the American troops on the ground now know they are pushing the German bulge back. At the start of 1945, Hitler is desperately trying to turn the war back in his favor. 24 divisions of Germans, including some of their best mechanized units, fight to push a 50-mile-long salient into Allied-held Europe. But the Americans hold the line, and now are fighting back. Some Allied commanders even believe they can use the situation to destroy the German army and speed up victory.
Eisenhower sees it as an opportunity to destroy the German army that more or less had been difficult to get at on its own side of the border. Now they've come out, you can really hit them with air and with reinforcements.
The strategy is simple.
The counterattack works by basically joining two strong hands together to just push the Germans back. So it's a matter of just regaining the ground you've lost. So the bulk of the Battle of the Bulge is attacks to regain that ground, usually pretty costly attacks, and usually under pretty fearsome winter conditions.
The Americans are at Germany's door. The Nazis will fight and die for every yard. A key location on the northern shoulder of the Bulge is the town of Bejo.
That's where I took over the company.
First Lieutenant James Morgia is with Easy Company, 84th Infantry Division.
The big problem was this. The Germans, after being pushed out of Bejo, they commanded the high ground around it. There were ridges around Bejo that made Bejo a target.
Inside the town are 5,000 U.S. troops and 5,000 civilians in a direct firing line from a company of Germans who control the high ground on the surrounding hills.
It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I got the troops together. We didn't know if there were any enemies up there. We didn't know if there were woods up there. We didn't know if there were buildings. We didn't know nothing. All I know is we had to take the high ground. I just followed my footsteps. And that's what they did. Everybody, 150 or more guys, were right behind me. They were stretched out over 200 yards, and I was going rapidly up the hill. This was like 6 o'clock in the morning. One thing about snow, there was no sound at all. Nothing moving around. Everything was absolutely quiet. Nothing. There was no noise.
Jim remains focused.
I wasn't thinking about nothing except getting to the target.
The silence is shattered. Easy Company is under fire, coming from a camouflaged farmhouse at the crest of the hill.
I yelled at the troops who were right behind me. All right, let's get up going. Let's run. And next thing you know, a whole platoon comes up, and I says, look, you got to get, these are buildings here.
Jim rushes headlong into the line of fire. Jim hears the sound of heavy gunfire from behind the cabin.
I looked out the window and there was shooting and people fighting all over the place. Germans were shooting their tanks at the building. I said, we got to get some artillery here. The only thing that's going to knock out the tanks is not us. I said, it's the artillery. I saw the very first shell come down and hit the truck right on the radiator nose cap. All these 200, 300 Germans were routed.
American gunners in World War II develop a devastating tactic called time on target. Each battery of guns fires its shells at different trajectories depending on how far away they are. And so their shells spend longer or shorter time in the air. The result, all the shells land at precisely the same time. A devastating amount of firepower on the German target in one big hit. With the aid of nearby artillery units, Lieutenant Morgia and his men take out the whole German force. Jim himself is awarded the Silver Star for bravery. But he credits the success of his mission to its early start.
I felt that secrecy and stealth and darkness was on my side. If they were up, the tanks would have taken one shot on my column. We would have been wiped out.
Attacking at 6 a.m. that morning was highly unusual. Often, up till now, American military action begins exactly at 9 o'clock. American generals now emphasize the idea of varying the times of attack from that day on. Jim believes this helped the Allied advance.
I figured they probably saved a lot of lives.
Hitler's last gamble fails. But the sacrifices made by the Americans are immense.
Most of the time when somebody gets hit alongside of you, you just gotta keep moving.
Sacrifices made for country and for each other.
The heroes are all dead. We don't have any live heroes. You were just there to know that you're not going to let your friends down. If you just know that, that's enough.
Over 80,000 men are killed or wounded. The Battle of the Bulge becomes the costliest American victory of World War II.
We built the greatest military machine the world had ever seen. But we came as liberators and not conquerors. And that's what we did, made a better world. I guess I just have to say, I'm glad we did it.